Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Today on Lyme Time, I am thrilled to have Dr. Bill Rawls back as my guest. We've done a couple of interviews before, but we have some special things to share this time. For over 30 years, Dr. Bill Rawls has dedicated his life to medicine. When a health crisis with chronic Lyme disease abruptly changed his quality of life, he came face to face with the limitations of modern medicine and began to explore the vast possibilities of alternative treatments. Restoring his health through holistic and herbal therapies inspired him to share his revelations on the importance of cellular wellness for defending against microbes and other root causes of illness. Today, he works to bring life and vitality to others as he helps them establish their own paths to wellness through modern herbology. Through his best-selling books, Unlocking Lyme and The Cellular Wellness Solution, Dr. Rawls demonstrates why crucial herbal phytochemicals are key to protecting cellular health and strengthening the body's defense against illness. Dr. Rawls is also the founder of Vital Plan, a holistic health company where he developed the signature Restore Kit, an advanced herbal protocol that has helped thousands to reclaim vibrant health. Dr. Rawls is a #1 best-selling author and seasoned speaker and interviewee. With a compassionate approach and an incredible depth of knowledge, Dr. Rawls has a distinct ability to make scientific concepts accessible and enriching for everyone. Welcome, Dr. Rawls.
Well, thank you, Allie. It's a pleasure.
You know, I've had the pleasure of interviewing you a few times, but
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever been able to launch a product of yours and a course in such a way that I am so excited to get into your new course and network. And guys, this is really going to bring it into your home. This is a way that Dr. Rawls can be in your home on a constant basis and give you really an understanding of what you would be getting from him in a one-on-one personal experience in his office. So before we get to all of that, I want to just reiterate how what your personal connection is to Lyme disease and how all of this started for you.
Yeah. Well, it has been quite a journey, an interesting one. I started out practicing obstetrics and gynecology. That's been over 30 years ago now. And it was very rewarding. It was dealing with a well population, bringing life into the world. But then, unlike now for most people, I had requirements of taking call in the hospital every second to third night, every second to third weekend. And most of those times I didn't get sleep. And in my 30s, I could just push through it. But by the end of my 40s, everything's just started falling apart. I lost the ability to sleep and my body just started crumbling. I didn't know what was going on. I finally was forced to stop taking call and I thought, well, things are just going to get better, and they just got worse. And I turned to my conventional colleagues and really got nowhere. The most that I could get is a diagnosis of fibromyalgia and prescriptions for symptoms. And that's about it. I just wasn't sick enough to have a diagnosis like multiple sclerosis or something terrible. And, now I look back and I go, wow, was I ever fortunate that it didn't get that far. But I kept searching, thinking there has to be something that's driving this. Looked at causes, cleaned up my diet, toxins in my environment, all of these kinds of things, and got some better, but not completely better. Finally, I kept coming back to this idea, could it be Lyme disease? Because, I spent my life in the woods and I got lots of tick bites. But I didn't remember becoming sick around the time of a tick bite. And at the time, it was in North Carolina where they didn't even recognize Lyme existed. So I kept discounting that possibility, but finally got a positive test, found that I was carrying some of these microbes and thought, hey, this is it. I can get antibiotics and I'll be fine. And round after round of antibiotics made me sicker than when I started. And long story short, I found an herbal protocol that restored my life. And ever since, I've been asking questions. What is chronic Lyme disease? And why is it so poorly understood? And why did these herbs have such an effect on my life? That was just remarkable. And I've come to very different conclusions about what this thing is compared to many conventional doctors, many Lyme doctors, most of the Lyme community. And it's really based on just digging for scientific facts over and over and over again for 2 decades now. And that's where I am.
It's such an incredible story, and I think that it's worth mentioning that you had Lyme carditis, so it actually was attacking your heart violently, and this was not an easy road for you. And to have the curiosity as to what really happened inside your body and what really brought you to total health is a gift that you're able to share with everybody today. I am blessed to have crossed your path because I'm a big believer in your recovery, in your restore kit. It's basically these four of these different bottles of herbal concoctions that have helped me personally get over the final hump. And when I say the final hump, I would have taken them earlier, but I didn't know about them. I was going down that conventional hamster wheel of craziness, and I wish I would have found them sooner, but they were able to help me really reach total and complete health. I love your book, Unlocking Lyme, because that is a very comprehensive, easy to read, user-friendly, basic understanding of Lyme disease and your story. And it really helped jumpstart my process for me. And then your latest book, The Cellular Wellness Solution, which I have a copy right here. And believe it or not, it's thick. It's like a dictionary. It reads, it's like maybe even more like an encyclopedia, but you can turn to any chapter at any time. And real, almost like a medical journal in a way, with any symptom you might have or diagnosis, and understand what immediately will make you start feeling better with herbs. And I love that. So can you just briefly, before we get into your new course, can you help us understand why herbs are able to bring cellular health and complete health to the cells that are damaged, as opposed to an antibiotic?
Yeah, well, kind of I'll flip that question around and say, why wouldn't they?
True.
So when you look at an herb, basically we're borrowing from another living organism, a plant. And plants, mushrooms, every living organism out there has to defend itself from bacteria, viruses, and other microbes. And that's even true of other bacteria. So bacteria are a threat to everything. And and how they do damage is getting in our body and basically destroying our cells. Our cells are food. Everything living is food for something else, and everything is made of cells. So our cells are food for microbes. And so when you look at that, no matter whether it's a cold virus or a Lyme microbe or a Ebola virus or anything else, what it's trying to do is get in our body and get to our cells to use those resources to build more microbes and use the organic molecules that our cells are made of as the resources to do that, basically as the food, the nutrients. So that's a real threat, that all microbes, invasive microbes, a pathogen is a microbe that does harm by damaging our cells and our tissues. And so when you look at that, plants have that same problem. Plants are constantly threatened by viruses, bacteria, everything under the sun. So plants are producing a chemical defense system. So we have a cellular defense system, our immune system. Plants use a chemical defense system, and they make chemicals that inhibit various kinds of microbes in a lot of different ways. So when we take an herb, we're basically borrowing that defense system. But different than an antibiotic, and all antibiotics originally came from natural sources, either a plant or a fungus or a bacteria. But what they did was, instead of taking the whole defense system of the organism, they take one chemical and potentiate it. So it is a very specific killer of fast-growing bacteria, but that's all. So when you look at a plant, you're getting this robust spectrum of things, and it has a certain intelligence about it. So when we take an herb, it suppresses threatening microbes in our body, but does not kill our normal flora. And that's the problem I ran into with antibiotics. All it takes is 10 days of taking an antibiotic to start disrupting the normal flora in your gut and selecting out pathogens that are antibiotic resistant. 10 days, that's all it takes. That doesn't happen with herbs. Antibiotic resistance to herbs has not been documented. So because we're getting this whole system instead of this one chemical that the bacteria can find a way around. And it also affects not just bacteria, but viruses, protozoa, yeast, and everything. And then when you combine multiple herbs together, you get a broader spectrum of coverage. And we're getting basically the same thing from a medicinal mushroom, in that we are borrowing that mushroom's defense system. So you combine all that together in these protocols for this condition defined as chronic Lyme, and it does some pretty remarkable things. But it's not just chronic Lyme. This is valuable for a lot of other purposes, just because these herbs have such a broad spectrum of activity. So it's really remarkable when you really get down to the science of what they're doing.
It's amazing. And I might add that also they are very relatively safe for somebody who is pregnant, or also children. And you can talk more about that, but I know we've covered it in other podcasts, and that's exciting for everyone. And it's great how you're using nature to combat something that's really systemically breaking down our bodies. And it's a gentle way of bringing you back to total health. And like you said, a lot of people can't tolerate the antibiotics. They haven't really been proven to do much good in the long run against Lyme disease. And I think we've talked about this too. Lyme disease attacks, and our body creates this response with the tick bite. And then we're left with the aftermath of Lyme disease for many, many years sometimes. And that is where your Restore Kit really, I think, just is crucial. Let's talk a bit about the Restore Kit, because tell me a little bit about the 4 bottles and how they're different, and what the protocol actually is. And by the way, Dr. Rawls can't really say that this is his Lyme protocol, but this is what he recommends for every Lyme patient, and then some.
Well, the whole idea is to create something that was user friendly for people to adapt and to adopt. And so when I was going through this process, of course, there was no Restore Kit. I was following loosely the Booner protocol that came out about the time that I was struggling with my illness. But I adapted that as I learned about more herbs and refined it a good bit. But when I was going through this, I had like a shoebox full of all kinds of different bottles, each one of them single ingredients. I was taking this crazy assortment of things, and it was just really, frankly, hard to keep up with.
I had the same shoebox, I think, and I bet a lot of
Yeah.
people out there can relate to just sort of stabbing in the dark and trying to figure out what the combinations are.
Yeah. And then one thing runs out and you forget about that and you don't take that for a while, and another thing runs out and then you got to reorder. And so the whole idea was, let's make it easier for people. So and I would love to say, wow, we could just get it in this one little bottle with it. You take a dropper full every day, like some of the products out there, and that's going to do it. It's not. You have to get enough of the concentration of the chemicals, the phytochemicals of the plant. And then this whole idea of protecting ourselves from stress, because that's really the root of this whole thing, is cellular stress. Protecting ourselves from free radicals and toxic substances, and nourishing ourselves, making sure our cells have the right nutrients and have the ability to detoxify and get rid of toxic substances. All of these things are important. So I looked at, well, how much of these most important ingredients can we get into a package that people could use? And I was, I could get it down to 4 bottles. And even that, occasionally people do need some things outside of that, but that gets their foundation. So it's got a spectrum of what I would call antimicrobial herbs with stronger antimicrobial properties, a bottle of herbs that are more adaptogenic. They help balance our stress, calm our immune system from immune overactivity, and doing those things. A bottle of nutrients and herbs that are helping us cover for things like methylation issues with B vitamins, and also herbs that protect our liver, protect our other organs. And then finally, a bottle with glutathione and NAC, which have proven to be really important substances just for protecting ourselves, helping our body detoxify. And putting that all in together in one package just makes it easier. And, but part of it, so two big things is making it simple. So I got it down so it's like 3 capsules of each bottle twice a day. And there's okay if people want to take it 3 times a day, but I found in my journey, if I could get something in twice a day, as busy as the rest of my life was, I was going to, that was going to be doing well, just to get it twice. And I found that most people, that's all they need, twice is enough. But also using the most potent extracts that we could find. So these herbal extracts are typically 10 times more concentrated with a phytochemical concentration than what people are getting in other average grade products. But the other thing is picking herbs that had a low potential for harm. They didn't have sedative effects. They didn't have stimulant effects. They didn't, they weren't going to adversely affect the liver. All of those things rolled into, so it's like, let's pick the ones that have the highest potential to provide gain and the lowest potential to cause harm. And that became that core. But again, I consider it a foundation. Half of people, that's all they need, but half of people are going to have to bring other things in, and that's okay. But it still makes it easier because you've got that core to work around.
Well, I'm going to ask a question. I think I know the answer to this, but some people out there may not know. As you know, there's so many different types of Lyme symptoms. I think you could write a book just on symptoms alone. And it varies from person to person and their genetic makeup and their particular response to the invader. In this case, it's Lyme disease. People have symptoms ranging from brain fog to disability, where they're not able to walk. They have they might have heart issues, they might have muscle problems. As you know, it just runs the gamut. And I'm wondering, somebody out there might be thinking, how does this work for everyone? And does it work for everyone? If you have a little, if you're one of the main symptoms children present with are, swelling of the joints and things like that. As you mentioned before, sleep disturbances. For some reason, so many people, once they come in contact with Lyme disease, they can be so fatigued and extremely exhausted and yet never sleep. So I guess my question is this a blanket thing that anybody can try with any of these symptoms?
Yeah, I try to get away from calling it a one size fits all. I like to refer to it more as a foundation, and some people are going to need other herbs or other nutrients or other things that might expedite their recovery. But I think what you just suggested is the big revelation of my journey and one of the biggest shortcomings I see in our medical system. So if you look at chronic illness, chronic Lyme, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, really anything, there are two components to all chronic illnesses. All kind of chronic illnesses have two components: the dysfunctional processes that are going on inside the body and the causes that are driving those processes. So we know about the dysfunctional processes. So dysfunctional processes are deviations from normal. If you're well, you don't have these things. All the processes in your body are doing like they're supposed to. There are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of processes going on in the body all the time to make us work. And they can all become dysfunctional. So we focus on the dysfunctional processes. All drugs, all medical therapies are focused on affecting dysfunctional processes to ease symptoms or slow progression of illness. But no drugs affect the underlying causes of those processes. And that's the problem. And so when you're chasing dysfunctional processes, and there are thousands and thousands, like you said, some people have joint issues, some people have heart issues, some people have brain issues, all these dysfunctional processes, and you're chasing all of those dysfunctional processes, you're always chasing your tail. So here's how to simplify it. And this is really important. This is the key to understanding wellness right here. All processes in the body are done by cells. Every single process that's done in the body, whether it's your thyroid being produced, whether it's your heart working, whether it's brain impulses firing, whether it's liver detoxifying toxic substances, everything, every single process is done by cells. Our body is made of cells. We are cellular organisms, all right? So when you look at that, each of our cells is a little functional unit. It's a microscopic machine that does work. And all of the functions of our cells are networked with hormones and other signaling agents. But that's done by cells too. So if you bring it down to that cellular level, every cell has the same, it's like your little microscopic machines. It's like your car, you have to put gas in it, you have to put oil in there, you have to do certain things to it for it to function right. Same thing with our cells. And those basic requirements are the same for all of our cells. So, and it's only 5 things. All of our cells need the right nutrients. We have to eat the right diet. Now, certain cells, like thyroid cells, need iodine to make thyroid hormone. Heart cells burn mainly fat. Our brain cells like carbs. But if you're eating a whole food diet, a diverse whole food diet, you're supplying all the nutrients that your cells need. Your cells need a clean environment to operate. And that is free of mycotoxins, free of other kinds of toxins, and all the stuff that we're exposed to in our lifetime right now those things inhibit our cellular functions, not to one cell in the body, every cell. Our cells need downtime. And some cells, like our heart cells, they have to rest in between beats. But most of our cells need a good 8 hours of sleep every night to regenerate. So if you're only getting 6 hours of sleep, you're starting your next day with cells that haven't recovered from the day before. So all cells need downtime. Cells need good blood flow from physical activity to wash away metabolic waste and allow them to purge toxic substances. So moving is so essential to move blood to flush all the debris and congestion away from our cells for our cells to stay healthy. And the final thing is our cells need protection from microbes, and that's not just the immune system, because where I'm standing, I'm very different than how, at one point it was like, I've got to kill this Lyme bacteria that's making me sick. Now I've come to appreciate that we pick up tick-borne microbes and all kinds of other things, literally hundreds, even thousands of things throughout our lifetime. And many of these things we're not even aware of. So like tick bites, most people don't get sick after a tick bite. These are low-grade pathogens, and they get in our system, they sneak past our immune system, they bore into our cells, our brain cells, our heart cells, our muscle cells, our joint cells, and they become dormant, because that's a mechanism of survival that all microbes use. And I've traced it for Borrelia, Bartonella, and even recently Streptococcus that's implicated in pandas have found that the strep can go into cells and be dormant and reactivate weeks, months, or years later, which explains pandas. Every microbe I've ever looked at, these low-grade pathogens that we're all exposed to, have the potential to become dormant inside our cells. And as long as our cells are healthy, we're eating a great diet, we are not exposed to toxic substances, we're getting rest, we're getting exercise, they stay dormant. But if enough stress has come together, and sometimes that stress could be like a new infection, like COVID or something like that, then the microbes reactivate. And when they do, they start breaking down our cells to build a food supply to fuel growth of other microbes. And so your insides, your tissues shift from this environment of healthy cells to one that favors microbe growth with this microbe frenzy all through your tissues breaking down your cells. So when you look at that, just those 5 requirements, cellular stress is the root of all chronic illness. Cellular stress is the root of inflammation. Cellular stress is the root of hormone dysfunction. Cellular stress is the root of every symptom and every sign of every chronic illness. So if you're getting to the root of cellular stress, which now I understand why these things work so well, you're getting to the root of all of it. And so when you're talking about an herb, you're not targeting just that one microbe. You're targeting everything that could be reactivating in your system. Plus, you're protecting your cells from free radicals, toxic substances, radiation, too much carbohydrate, virtually every stress factor. So that kit is this extreme cell protection system. Not one cell, every cell in your body. And that's why it's working for every symptom.
And that's why I continue to take it, because I have healed from Lyme disease. However, I'll tell you a little story. I went in to get some dental work done, and it was a little bit extensive. So it was over the course of a couple of days. And sure enough, one of those 5 things must have gotten out of whack, because I came down with shingles. And then, which I had already had. So it was a mild case, thankfully. But then that triggered the EBV reactivation. So it's like, I think that this is when I turned back to the Restore Kit, because no matter what you're going through, if something's tripped, if you get a flare out of the blue as you're going along your merry way, this does help those kinds of things as well. So it's healing things from a cellular level. And I just really can't say enough about the Restore Kit. And I love it. It's my favorite product of yours, aside from some other things. But like this CBD, but I know I said that and then I remembered, oh, you've taken a pause off that for a second, but this Restore Kit is just so great. And why don't we talk a little bit about what's new about the Restore Kit in your world and what you're offering to Lyme disease patients as well as other chronic illness people out there. And then I will offer a special code to our listeners.
All right. Well, we do have a lot going on right now. That Restore Kit, I think, is very valuable for not just chronic Lyme disease, but many different things. We've had people with a range of different conditions actually benefit because, when I look at this thing, I think cellular stress and reactivated microbes is really at the core of any illness. And as I mentioned, I found studies looking at streptococcus that looked at how it was happening with a disease like pandas. And this was a new study out that showed that the streptococcus invades white blood cells and travels to the brain and everywhere else where it can enter tissues, invade cells, and become dormant. So it's not just chronic Lyme. It's so many different things. And you're right. It's not this infection, this new entry. It's the reactivation of things that we all carry. And eradicating those things is impossible. It is part of us. It is just part of being alive. It's been documented that every living organism carries microbes within its tissues in a dormant state. So winning the battle, that constant pressure of these extra antimicrobials in addition to our immune system can really be beneficial for us staying ahead of the game. And so, I'm always looking at how we can improve the Restore Kit, and I think in the future there will be some additions to the to the offerings that we have. But right now we're focused on just that education piece of carrying people to that next level. Because it's not just the herbs. Those 5 parameters, you do have to clean up your diet. You do have to work on stress. You do have to get physically active again and clean up your world and all of those kinds of things. So helping people make those things happen is vitally important. And we've worked for years on how we better do that. So we've recently found the opportunity of building a community that we've called Vital Plan Network, and it is within this thing called Mighty Networks that gives us a lot of freedom to do a lot of things. So there is an open forum that people within the network can ask questions to other people that are either a little bit ahead of them on their journey or going through these same things. But there will be live streams, there'll be Q&As, there'll be just different kinds of events that we're going to have ongoing, guest speakers. So I know people get tired of just listening to me all the time. So we want bring in some other speakers to talk and really get involved with the whole thing. But the thing that I am the very most excited about is the ability within that platform to offer courses. Education is where it's so important to me to get this, because I put so much work into understanding these things, and I've come to different conclusions that other people have that really are the key to reaching that goal of wellness, of surpassing this thing that we call chronic Lyme disease and helping people understand that. So I've written books that you mentioned, and I love it when people read the books, but I've wanted other ways to make it easier for people to gather that information. So courses offer that opportunity. So so far I've built one course that we're calling the Jumpstart course, and it really is the essence of everything that I've learned in 20 years. And that's available to anybody who wants it. It's 6 lessons. I tried to keep the lessons down. They're each less than 10 minutes. And they have some material that accompanies it just to support the learning that you have with each lesson. So it goes through and just looks at that question of what is chronic Lyme disease that we just talked about a little bit, why antibiotics really aren't a good fit, why herbs are a good fit, what are the things that you really need to be doing to get well, and a little bit more about that herbal protocol. So that's one course, and that's kind of like if everybody that out there doing chronic Lyme or struggling with chronic Lyme did that one course, I think it would really change how we're looking at this thing, and together we can move forward faster once we're all on the same page. But the course I'm working on right now is more about getting into the weeds of really understanding what's going on in an individual. So when I go through a consult with someone, I've been doing consults for a decade, and I got away from doing so many labs because I found what the labs were doing were testing for all these dysfunctional processes, and you go to the doctor, it doesn't matter what kind of doctor, and they do all these labs, and some of those things are valuable because if you have a brain tumor or something terrible, we need to know about it. There are limits to the capacity that your cells have for regeneration. You need to know about those things up front. But beyond that, just, testing for all these different abnormal processes where the answer is really looking for the underlying causes. And I found that I could understand more about why a person is sick by getting to the root. And sometimes that starts in childhood, is just picking through and looking at, how all these cellular stress factors come together to make them ill through their lifetime, and what were the obstacles that were still in place that were keeping them from getting well. So what I'm doing with this course is carrying somebody through that whole thought process. I use a sample patient that is really kind of a conglomeration of many patients that I've seen to go through stepwise and just look at that person's situation. And I think most anybody can relate to it and understand, what's going on inside their body, what kind of things are driving their illness, and what kinds of, and that, using that as a vehicle for helping people find the obstacles that are in the way of their recovery and how to step through getting beyond them. So I'm pretty excited about that course.
Oh, it just sounds great. I wish I would have had it about 12 years ago or so, because I think it does. It's some people are not readers necessarily, and they'll pick up a book and then they'll get distractions, and they're working, and their debilitating illness is completely, it destroys your ability to even concentrate, much less read a thorough book. I love your books and I use them like Bibles personally, but I do think there's something to be said for, there's many people out there laying in bed right now that can't do their normal functions and they can't go about their daily life. There's something about putting their laptop right there beside them and learning and absorbing all this information as they can go along. They don't have to do it a whole hour in one sitting. They could do 10 minutes at a time if they wanted to, and really, really get personal advice from you, who I consider a leading expert in Lyme disease. And that's an understatement, because you've done so much work for our community. So I like this idea of having it really at our fingertips. Having you at our fingertips.
I've tried to, it's something I've wanted to do for a long time, is make that process that I use in a consult available to everyone. Just to, and then, follow it up in the community with Q&As and different kinds of things to help people individualize when they get stuck. So not just leaving them hanging, really giving them good information that they can build on. but I forced myself. It's really, really hard to do, to keep all the lessons under 10 minutes. And I've also designed them that people would just listen to the audio, they'd still get the same information. But for people who don't want to do that, that will still have the script. So you can just read it, and then it'll have other support content and some exercises for people to do to kind of work through that problem themselves. So by the end of it, they're in a different way of thinking than when they started, about how to manage their illness and move from point A to point B. To not only use the herbs, but learn how to get the most value out of the herbs and all the other things.
Well, I love it because you've just given me the key. When somebody says, what can I do? I just learned I was diagnosed. I don't know where to turn. You're really going to be my first answer now, because it really is a program that can help anyone at any time, no matter what stage of Lyme disease they're facing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the design. And, I couldn't have done this course 10 years ago, or certainly not 20 years ago. It's really just been pushing to, with each book, with each course, with each bit of content that I do, I learn new ways of telling the story more succinctly so people can understand it faster. And as I do that, I want people to really be able to hang on to this information so that they truly understand exactly what's going on. And that opens the door to knowing exactly what to do about it. And I think that's critical for people to get well. But also understanding the limits. It's the thing that I find most attractive about people with chronic Lyme disease and fibromyalgia and autoimmune illnesses, for that matter, is the potential for recovery is extremely high. And so there are limits on cellular recovery. So what healing is the ability of cells to recover from stress and regenerate. And all of our cells have that. But there are limitations. It's like if you burn out half your thyroid cells, you're just not going to be able to compensate anymore. You're going to have thyroid hormone. So that's where I see a place for conventional medical therapies, is when things from a cellular point of view are beyond the capacity of cellular recovery, then that's when medical therapies have more value. It's like most people with chronic Lyme disease have demyelination symptoms that are similar to MS, but they're not as severe. If someone gets to the point that they are actually diagnosed with MS, their symptoms are such that their cellular damage is such that they're probably not going to get all of that back. Now, they can still benefit. I always tell the story of a patient that I had early on. This has been a long time ago, when I was first putting this together. Really didn't completely know what the herbs were doing, but I put together these 5 categories of stress factors. So I had a patient with MS come in my office that hadn't had success with the drug therapies. And she was in a wheelchair. And she said, what have I got to lose? Sure, I'll do your diet thing and I'll take the herbs and whatever. Within 6 weeks, she was walking with a cane. Now, that was probably her limit. She's not going to get absolutely everything back because of some nerve damage, but she still gained a lot. But again, that's a really wonderful thing about that I found with most chronic Lyme and fibromyalgia patients, is they have a very high potential to get back to completely normal health.
Absolutely. And I think it's just so nice that they have a buddy going through it with them when they're doing these courses, because quite frankly, it seems simple that we just need to do these 5 things and our health will be restored. It is really hard. It's very hard. Sometimes we can't move, and sometimes we don't really understand the complete process of a healthy and clean diet. You know, I thought that meant salads in the beginning. And I just didn't really even understand that salad dressings were the major culprit. They were just packed with gluten. And I kept, so there's just, it's just kind of, it's a whole new way of life.
It is.
And I think that any amount of time that anybody could spend taking a course from you would be time well spent. And
Yeah.
I wish I could talk to you for another hour on this, and I'm sure I will at another time, but I really appreciate your time. You have been a beacon of light in this community, and I want to say thank you so much. You've helped me as a human being.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything you would like to end with and leave our listeners with?
Well, just that, yes, we have all of these things that are available, and please take advantage of them. These courses are just the start. Sooner or later, I'd like to have like a basic herbal course and work through a course of really helping people take a deep dive in diet, a deep dive in detox. So we're just going to keep rolling things out as long as I'm able to keep rolling things out. And it is hard. At age 67, I'm still refining. I'm still learning. I'm still making adjustments. And that's part of life. But I've gotten to the point that I actually enjoy that aspect of life, that these refinements are enhancing my life, not inconveniencing my life. And that's really important for people to get to that point.
That's right. That's right. I think you've hit the nail on the head. When you can fully embrace a lifestyle change, it is a beautiful thing, because all of a sudden your health comes together, your life comes together, your mind, body, spirit connection is all operating on the same wavelength, and that is just, it makes life so wonderful. So again, thank you. I will provide all of my listeners with a code, and I'm sure it will be at thetickchicks.com ASAP as we air this. And I appreciate it so much, Dr. Rawls. Thank you.
It's good to see you.
You too.